The last time I talked about Little Sleepies, I was telling you, I wish they made this stuff for adults because I would wear it every day. The patterns are gorgeous and everything looks so soft. Today I'm here to say, yeah, Little Sleepies actually makes adult clothing too. It's like I willed it to happen. They have grown-up loungewear and pajamas that are meant for comfort. The Dove gray crewneck sweater could be my new writing uniform. And the women's dreamy lounge pullover, I think I could wear that every day. But really, at the heart of it, Little Sleepies is for kids and the parents of kids who want their children to be wearing soft, adorable attire. And they're looking to you, the wonderful friend, the knowing auntie, the creative shopper, to find them something that is loved by their little one. And sure, maybe looks adorable in family photos posted on Instagram. If you want to be that person who gets your friend or family member that exact right gift, or someone who gets something amazing for yourself, listen up for that coupon code. If you're expecting or dressing little ones, check out Little Sleepies. You can visit littlesleepies.com and use promo code PODSPRING26 for 15% off full price products. That's PODSPRING and number 26 for 15% off full price products.
All right, ladies.
When you've done the work, you want your hydration to do the same. Introducing new Gatorade Lower Sugar, now with no artificial flavors, sweeteners, or colors. And 75% less sugar and all the electrolytes of regular Gatorade, now available nationwide.
K-pop Demon Hunters Haja Boys breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja Boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is our larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
Not long ago, Simone, a single woman in her 40s, noticed something specifically annoying about her experiences on dating apps. She'd match with a guy. She'd ask him a question. Then he'd answer that question. Then she'd ask him another question. And he'd answer that question. And then nothing. So she'd ask something else. Like, oh, how was your weekend? And the guy would write back something like, it was great. I watched the game. Period. No questions asked in return.
It just felt like I would ask a question related to their profile and they would just answer the question. Like literally just perfunctory or maybe like a sentence or two, but there was never anything back like, oh, you're showing interest in me, so therefore let me ask a question about you. And I felt like there was none of that interest. And so I would literally just text follow-up questions and kind of just try to keep it going. I'm doing all this heavy lifting. And then a day or two in, they haven't asked me anything back. And so I'm like, am they really that interested or are they interested in the idea that I'm interested in them?
Simone started to feel tired because it is really exhausting to have to keep asking things when the other person isn't reciprocating. She found herself wondering, why don't men ask questions? Which is a complicated question in and of itself.
They could literally ask me what's my favorite color, and I'd be even okay with that.
Simone wondered, if men don't ask me anything, how are they supposed to fall in love with me? And how am I supposed to like them at all? From the Boston Globe, this is Love Letters. I'm Meredith Goldstein. Simone, the star of our story today, wrote an anonymous letter to the Love Letters advice column a few months ago. It went like this.
Dear Meredith, overall, I rely on dating apps to continue to put myself out there as a single mom over 40. I don't really have time for long periods of texting, so I usually like to chat back and forth for a few days, move to a call, and if there's a vibe, go on a first date. But lately, I have found that texting is a struggle because the majority of men don't help carry a conversation. I will ask an open-ended question related to their profile. They will literally answer the question and zero follow-up. Not even a reciprocal, how about you? Or what do you think? Are they waiting for me to ask another question? I wind up turned off because I feel like I'm interrogating them rather
In
than
her letter, Simone asked me for advice about what to do about this. She wanted to know, should she continue doing all the work to make conversation continue, even if she's getting nothing from the man on the other side? She asked me if she should put a specific note on her profile that says, only conversationalists need apply, to let non-question askers know they aren't wanted. I did give her some advice, which we'll get to later. For now, I'll say that Simone's question led to me talking about this issue with a bunch of people. Some in my world, even some commenters at the bottom of Simone's letter, were like, yeah, men do not ask questions. They are particularly bad at it. Other people said it's not a gender thing and told me this is a modern-day problem because people are too online to remember how to converse. Some said it was about age and maturity, although Simone's in her 40s, so you'd think the people she's trying to date, who are around her age, would have learned how to ask questions by now. I wanted to know more about all of this, so I did a thing I rarely do. I invited Simone to come talk to me in person and answer my questions about her dating experiences. I rarely reach out to people who write questions to the Love Letters column because they're not asking to be on the podcast. But I said to her, hey, if you come in, maybe together we could answer some questions about the lack of questions. I should mention that Simone is going by Simone, not her real name, because she's a teacher in Massachusetts and her students don't need to know her business. To start, Simone grew up in New York.
I come from a Caribbean household. My parents immigrated in the 60s, late 60s. And so I grew up there and then came to Massachusetts pretty early. I came up for boarding school. So I've been in a relationship with Massachusetts since I was 14 years old.
So tell me, when you were growing up, what did you assume your adult romantic life would be?
I grew up in the church, so I think I assumed that I was going to get married at some point, have several kids, that it was going to be a pretty traditional life as far as romance.
Simone's first significant romantic relationship is in college in Massachusetts.
I met him my freshman year. We were in the dorms together. He lived down the hall. He was roommates with his brother, and I would hang out with them all the time. And then we were in a relationship, I think, until junior year. I went abroad, and then the relationship kind of fell apart at that point.
After college, Simone decides it's time to see the world. She travels all over.
So I went on a grand adventure. I went and I taught English as a second language, but I wasn't really interested in teaching at that time, but I wanted to do it as the vehicle to go and explore. I had a great time.
Simone, who was already a curious type of person, finds that other expats abroad are also good at asking questions. That's part of survival, to get to know people quickly. People traveling abroad find community through discovery.
With the expat community, you did talk to people all the time. When you were on trips, you would meet people. You'd ask them about their life story. You'd end up bouncing and just meeting people. I mean, every school vacation, we went to a different country in Asia. Me and several girlfriends who were teaching there and were expats. It was great. And so I didn't come back till I was 26.
Simone returns to Boston for grad school in public health and eventually settles permanently in town. It's on her way back from visiting her family in New York that she meets someone on the bus heading back to Boston.
It's actually really funny. He was looking out the window. Somehow I just knew that meant he was new to Boston because usually everyone's zoned out and no one's paying attention. But he's looking at the skyline. I just asked him are you new to Boston? And so then we just picked up a conversation. I was sitting next to him, so that made it a little less awkward. And so I invited him to start hanging out with our roommates. And, we became friends, right? And then, one thing led to another and, we became partners for a short bit.
Simone's relationship with this man grows and they have a full arc. They become friends, they're a couple, they get engaged, and they have a child together. But after a hard breakup, they ultimately decide they're better off as co-parents. Years later, Simone tries to date again, now as a single parent.
I started thinking about getting back into the dating pool when there was more of a rhythm. I didn't have that much free time to go out to a bar or go places. My routine became very finite, which then meant the people that I knew became very finite. And I think that's when I started being like, I have to try something different. So like we started to have more of a consistent exchange of nights. And then we'd even gotten very familiar and being like, oh, actually, I'm not free on this night. Can you watch him? And I felt like then I had a little bit more flexibility to say like, okay, I could go out on a date and kind of move things around.
Putting yourself out there, did that automatically to you mean I got to get on the apps?
Yeah. By that point, because I also felt like people were telling me that people weren't organically coming up to you in the same ways, right? And maybe if I was like a bar person, but I'm also not really a bar person, right? So I was like, well, that's kind of out because I feel like that was still like a bastion in my brain. I don't know if it's true or not, but that was my brain was like the last bastion of places where people would go and just randomly walk up to someone. Like they're not going to do it on the street, but they probably would do it at a bar, but I don't really like going there.
But even at a bar, like I have an ex-boyfriend who told me that before he got married, you went up to people everywhere. You went up to somebody at a bar and once he got divorced, he was like, wait, now going up to somebody at a bar feels predatory. Like he felt like the culture had changed with dating apps and social media where he's like, it actually feels like he's crossing a boundary to walk to a table with a woman at, he was just like, I don't want to seem like some creep, which was the whole thing before of why people went to bars. It was to interact with other people. So I imagine that beyond the apps, like the culture of socialization had changed. What was the first app you tried?
OkCupid.
Why?
Thinking back on it, I really liked all the questions. I liked that there felt like there was more to approach a person with and like talk with them about, right? Because they have you do all this is who I am, my favorite things. And then they ask even more questions that are in like the background. Do you agree or disagree on these things? So I felt like I could find something to authentically talk with this person about versus being like, hey, you look cute. Like, which we all know that's why you swiped. But after you swipe, I'm like, I'm not a flirter. I've never been good. I've always been kind of shy. So like, it would be very hard for me to flirt with someone, but I can have a conversation.
Simone likes OkCupid because it asks her questions. Keep that in mind as we continue. Did you have success as you were starting OkCupid? How did you feel about it?
In the early years, I feel like I did have success being able to talk with people. I went out on dates every so often. It still wasn't the greatest success rate and being like, oh, now I have this like swinging social life and like I'm trying to find out ways to go date. But I felt like I was having authentic connections with people, interesting conversations, and then we'd move to talking on the phone. But then I would often reach a point where people were ghosting and then I would jump off for a couple months. Because again, I'm busy. I have, my son. I have something else that I'm focused on.
Simone finds herself on and off the apps over a period of years. When she's annoyed, she hops off. Then she gets energy and tries again. It's when she gets back on in the last year, she realizes these apps feel even more bleak. And she begins to notice, I feel this way because men are not asking me questions.
One guy said they were a texter, and I literally got a drunk text and like a drunk call. And I really had to write back. I was like, you said you were a texter, but like I'm not getting anything back except for this.
It's in this more recent era of trying again that Simone hits another wall, not being asked a question. She searches this on Reddit and finds that when people talk about this problem, they say it's because singles on apps are sick of all the talk. They're burnt out on back and forth, so they just want to get to a date. And Simone understands that. She's not in this for a pen pal either. But there has to be some banter, right? Some conversation? So she types up a question of her own, to me. Can you tell me where you were when you wrote that letter to me and what made you do it that day?
I literally had jumped off the app. I was looking at the thread of multiple conversations where I'm like, that person was just there and I was just so frustrated. So then I just grabbed my laptop and I just typed out the letter because I was like, maybe, because I also like your readers and I think your readers will, sometimes give good advice. So I'm like, maybe other people are experiencing this or maybe there's some feedback. Maybe I'm doing it wrong because again, I am not a connoisseur of these apps. And maybe, I feel like I'm coming from a space of authenticity. And I know some people try to do the apps or their strategies. And I'm like, I don't know. So I was like thinking maybe your readers might have also been able to give me clarity and insight that I was missing.
We'll get into the advice and what others said. I just want to make it really clear that Simone makes it very easy for someone to be curious about her. When she comes in to record this episode, I ask her to show me her dating profile so I can imagine what I'd ask her if I was some guy online and thought she was cute. So I'm looking at your bio. You say you've traveled to over 25 countries. You love cooking, running, biking, going to museums. So I have a million questions for you as a person. One of the things I love about this bio, which is telling of a person, is I prefer visiting towns versus cities when I travel. I would immediately want to be like, what's your favorite small town that you've seen? And what would you say?
What would I actually say?
Yeah, what would you actually say?
I'm
some handsome man on an app. What would you say?
I would say Laos, because I had a great time in Laos, and we were like taking a trip down the Mekong River, and we stopped overnight in this tiny town. They didn't have electricity, so when we were eating dinner, it was like candlelight. They had like small generators, so like some of the places were lit up. It was like just this surreal thing with like the kids playing. It was really cool, and I have never replicated that.
And then I would say to you, but you live in a city. Do you ever think about living in a small town in Massachusetts?
And I laugh and I'd be like, if I met the right person. But because I grew up in a city, and that's what I would respond. I grew up in New York City. I live in Boston. So I definitely could see slowing down.
I mean, you mentioned a bunch of stuff that's easy to ask about. Food, travel, doing active things. Like, this isn't hard. I will say that Simone's issue has come up before, and not just in the context of apps. People have said to me they do get asked questions on apps, but then they get to a date and they're doing all the conversational work, which often involves asking questions. And while I do hear this more about men than I do women, I also see it as a cultural thing. That outside of gender, you can come from a family where you're trained to ask questions, that it's rude not to ask questions, while other people see questions as none of their business. But questions are part of basic civility, whether you want small talk or more. You have to go back and forth, or it's just one person working the whole seesaw by themselves. When we come back, my advice for Simone, and some input from experts about why some people just don't ask. Wayfair has free shipping on everything from April 25th to April 27th. That's kind of all I want to say. Free shipping on things I want, which include a cool mirror that makes the room seem bigger, an organizing contraption for the nonsense all over my desk, bookshelves, and now that I can go outside, because it's not miserable out, really cool outdoor furniture and decor, so I can sit in a chair, perhaps with a book from that bookshelf, and live my best life. With deals up to 80% off and free shipping on everything from April 25th to April 27th, it's kind of the perfect excuse to upgrade the look of home. You can filter by style, mid-century, modern, eclectic, set a budget, read reviews, and actually land on something that makes sense. Wayfair Verified also means products are checked for quality ahead of time. Wayday is the sale to shop the best deals in home. We're talking up to 80% off with fast and free shipping on everything. Head to wayfair.com April 25th through the 27th to shop Wayday. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
Good sleep is everything. That's why Ollie's Science Back Support is made with a blend of melatonin and L-theanine for both kiddos and grown-ups. So when your mind won't switch off, you've got something that can help. Your racing thoughts and restless nights won't stand a chance. Find Ollie Sleep Solutions for the whole family at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
This episode is brought to you by Welch's Fruit Snacks. Big news for your kids' lunchbox. Welch's Fruit Snacks are now made without any artificial dyes. A snack parents can feel good about and the same delicious taste kids can't get enough of. All made with no artificial dyes. Try Welch's Fruit Snacks today.
We're back. When I read Simone's letter, I did answer it as an advice columnist and relationship journalist. But I also thought, this is way above my pay grade, like sociologically. I couldn't tell Simone whether this problem is particularly bad now, and if so, why? Which is why I reached out to an expert.
Hi, I'm Dr. Todd Kashdan. I have been running the Wellbeing Laboratory since before Wellbeing was cool in 1998, and we study all the things you want to talk about at a party: friendship, stress, resilience, anxiety, curiosity, courage, compassion, you name it. Psychologically, we study it.
One of Dr. Kashdan's areas of expertise is curiosity. He's done a ton of writing about it and how it can change our lives and relationships. Curiosity, of course, often involves wondering things about another person. We are talking to you about this because somebody wrote in about men not asking questions on dating apps, and they were specific about it being men. I'm not sure it's ever fair to generalize, but they were having an experience that I now see many people having where you're going back and forth and you're like, what did you do this weekend? And the person would be like, I went skiing. End of conversation. Second question, okay, well, I'm going to ask them a question back. I'm going to try to keep this going. And then it's like, I like avocados, period. And she's exhausted. Is this the way people are now? So I know this isn't the lens through which you think about question asking, but can you talk about what is happening when someone is engaging, but so minimally they're not asking questions?
One of the things is we are being societally untrained to having synchronous communications like this, where in real time, you say something, I could respond in a multitude of different ways. And I have to deal with your emotions, your nonverbals, the context of who you are and what came right before that. And so as we moved, forget smartphones, as we moved to emails, as we moved from letters to texting, all these asynchronous forms of communication allows us to constantly edit and be a little bit more intelligent, a little bit more witty, a little bit more warm and playful, and maybe have a cute little ending. And what it does is it doesn't prepare us for the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen next in an actual conversation. And so in some ways, people are not developing the skill. This is younger people that are entering the mating market or dating. And then for older people, they're actually have these erosion of skills in terms of you have such a vast number of people sociologically who are going out less with friends in a given week and spending less time with their families face to face, much less spending time actually with a number of hours of developing the skill of how do you deal with physical attraction, desire for physical intimacy, and keep up a conversation. That's a complicated thing when you actually break down the mechanics of it.
I asked Dr. Kashdan whether this is regional. Our producer Jasmine and I have theories about this. She and I both believe that not asking questions is a little Massachusetts-ish. Like here, where we live, there's a bit of a vibe of it's nobody's business. Jasmine and I are not from here, so it's interesting we both noticed this moving here at different times. Jasmine has actually seen a Boston area woman be wildly interested in her, very curious, and still not ask her many questions. Dr. Kashdan says sure, geography and family culture may be a part of it, but he has more to say when I ask him about gender and sharing information in general. Is it dangerous to say, oh, men don't ask questions, or women always ask questions, or they don't in the workplace? Or is it even fair and correct at this point based on what you're seeing? Is gender a factor in who may seem curious on a dating app?
There's no question about it. I mean, these effects are small, but they're real. Women are more likely to disclose personal information about themselves. Women are more likely to express their emotions. And one of the benefits about expressing your emotions is it reveals what are the intense experiences that are really worthwhile to follow up on. And when men are less likely to express what makes them feel sad or anxious, they'll definitely share irritability and irate and anger. That's the emotion where men are willing to express. But if they don't share where they feel calm, serene, excited, because the fear is if I like something too much, then I could be jolted if the person in front of me doesn't share the same interest. And so there's this, women don't show that same level of concern. So they're willing to throw more things onto the platter for people to kind of poke and probe, and men have this kind of this greater evaluative concern about their interests.
Dr. Kashdan also tells me something about what questions men might ask. And what he says makes a lot of sense to me.
And one of the things that we know that where there's a big sex difference is when people share rewarding, positive things that happen to them. So their accomplishments, things that they're prideful about. men are more likely to point out problems with the situation, and women are more likely to capitalize and have them talk more about the thing that was amazing. So, Meredith, if you just won an award at work, I would ask, like, how did they deliver it to you? Like, how do you get this news? Like, who are you up against? What was the criteria? What's the extra award besides is there something else that comes besides the award?
This reminds me of the time I got my first book published, and my sister was like, "Are you so excited?" And a man in my family asked, "How many copies has it sold?" Of course it had not sold many copies, probably. And I just thought, why is he asking this question? I want to say that Dr. Kashdan has a lot of thoughts about this, which we will turn into a bonus episode, because it's all interesting and makes me think about how to ask a good question, because not all questions help with connection. Thinking about the regional part of it all, despite Massachusetts being a place where people don't always want to ask a bunch of personal questions, some people here are working to get better at it. Ashley Kersner runs Skip the Small Talk, a question-asking event that started where I live, but now runs in many cities, including Nashville, Philly, Denver, DC, and I see some chapters in Europe. Ashley's background is that she's conducted research with professors at Cornell, the University of Miami, and at the Emotion Research Lab at Boston University. Ashley started Skip the Small Talk about 10 years ago, inviting people to come to events as strangers. These were not necessarily dating events at all, just get-to-know-you practice sessions. She was trying to help people talk and connect. The idea came from important work.
I was volunteering at a suicide hotline, and I was noticing that regardless of what people were calling in about, that people were very hesitant to share their inner struggles with the people they already knew. So they were happy to spill their guts to a stranger, but when pressed, they would say that they didn't want to be a burden on their loved ones. They just didn't talk about that sort of thing. And so I was almost wondering if I could get people to practice vulnerability in a more structured way. What would happen if we got people to talk to strangers about the meaningful stuff so that the stakes were low? It wouldn't feel like you were being a burden on anyone. You knew everyone had opted in.
If you go to a Skip the Small Talk event, you don't have to stress out about what to talk about. Ashley has come up with questions, and facilitators guide people through them.
We do have some cards there at the tables, and I'll also have a few questions up here on the screen. You can choose the cards that you would like. If you would like to take a card from a neighboring table, you can. If you do not like your card...
What I find fascinating is that people who show up for this, they want to ask questions. In fact, they don't even want small talk. The program is literally called Skip the Small Talk. That said, Ashley knows that if there wasn't a moderator to guide the question asking, people wouldn't know what to do, which might prove that even curious people who wish they could ask questions don't know how to get it going on their own.
We kind of accidentally found out because every so often there's a venue where like the microphone isn't working super well and like the acoustics are bad. And so people don't necessarily hear the instructions to use the question cards. But it was so interesting because the way we found out was even though the question cards were on people's tables, they were not touching them. And you could see the body language at the event was just not there. I think we're all in this sort of societal moment where it's very difficult to convince yourself to be the first to be vulnerable, I think. And the most interesting questions and the most connecting questions are the ones that are a little bit vulnerable to ask. And because we're all a little out of vulnerability practice, it's a lot harder to get yourself to ask the questions that are actually going to lead to real conversations.
This is why I have some empathy for people who are bad at this. Yes, it's common sense that if you're on a dating app, you'll have to ask questions like, hey, liking this weather? Or anything. But maybe even small questions seem big right now. But our time is limited. People like Simone shouldn't be required to do all the work. And here's where we get to the advice that she has learned on her own. Number 1, when Simone gets frustrated with a lack of questions, she does ask herself whether there's something else at play.
Sometimes it's a language barrier, and I wasn't always like really mindful of that, of being like, maybe that's why someone isn't. And then so sometimes when I ask questions and I realize, okay, We look at their background, or I'll look at what they've written me. I'm like, oh, it's a language barrier. And so in those cases, I'm more likely to go on the phone or more likely to go on the date with them and just kind of see like where it goes.
Number 2, Simone has also learned that for her, single parents are better at this. Maybe it's because they have to date more intentionally. Or maybe it's because they're used to asking things like, "What did you do at school today?" I mean, to be real, Simone is really good at asking questions as a single mom who's also a teacher.
Because you're trying to make relationships with students, so you're asking them questions about their lives. And the same thing, you can't just dig into a student's life, so you're like asking them softball questions, getting to know them, right? You're trying to figure out their behavior. We do icebreaker questions, and I'm like online being like, what's a cool icebreaker question? And I've even defaulted to that sometimes.
But the big thing is, Simone is getting better at saying, "I don't want to work this hard." That was my answer to Simone when she wrote her letter. I told her that if people aren't curious pretty quickly, drop the conversation. Simone has been better about doing less work, maybe leaving her more energy to connect with a few people who want to ask. On the day she came in, she'd had a few dates with someone who seemed curious. Perhaps she wouldn't have seen him if she'd continued one-sided conversations with other guys. There are some people who feel a little uncomfortable asking questions, and they're not that good at it. They may be curious, but they may feel like it's not their place. What advice would you give to them about breaking through these barriers in conversations online? What do you want to be asked?
I think you can just start with lowball questions, because I think even just like, what are your favorite colors? What do you like to do? I think sometimes people feel like those are trite questions. Those are questions that seem boring, but even those get you to a level of comfortability to like move things forward. So don't skip over what you might think is like, oh, that's a boring question, you know?
Skip the Small Talk question cards and events can be found on its website, skipthesmalltalk.com. Dr. Todd Kashdan's books can be found at toddkashdan, KASHDAN.com. This episode was produced by Jasmine Aguilera. Story edit by Veronica Chow. Sound design by Jasmine Aguilera. Special thanks to Linda Henry and Brian McGrory. Remember, Love Letters loves questions. Send any questions about dating, divorce, marriage, singlehood, friendship, whatever, to loveletters@boston.com. When you send a question, you help people wondering the same thing. And if you like the show, please leave us a review.
But I do think just being in the Northeast, there's more of an exterior. I'm going to wait till you broach it. I think Bostonians on the surface are like, yeah, I don't know what they're waiting for.
I'm Meredith Goldstein. Thanks for asking.